as I was talking about, at the center of the earth, or uh, deep down in the bowels of the Pentagon. Uh, I think the Demiurge, in some form or another, is present and is influencing and directly speaking through uh, the uh, the men and women there. You could just say the people who are writing other gospels and uh, other things that were not in line with what the church wanted to teach. Uh, there was this probably monk in Egypt who put all the sacred books of Gnosticism in this giant jar and buried it in a cave in Egypt near a town called Nag Hammadi. It's said by many Gnostics that the Archons cannot actually physically uh, attack the Earth, but holographically or interdimensionally, they can enter, or through quantum tunneling, they can enter our brains. Talk about conspiracies, uh, and these are the powerful families that are they are possessed by archons. That's why I call them parasites, because the archons want to constantly say everything's fucked up. Oh, wow, why do you go on living? And yeah, here your wife can help out. Like you've tried and tried, and there's no point in living anymore, and or just like why spend so much time uh, bringing up your child, or doing your job at work? Oh, it doesn't matter. Everything's screwed up. It's a fucked up world. And before you know it, you're going to be drinking that whiskey or beers, and taking your pills, and because you're convinced it's a fucked up world, and they are being taught through these movies about the world. Now, in olden times, medieval times, and even before, we told children fairy tales, uh, stories that were really scary, that had real monsters in them. But now, not supposed to, really frighten the children with these things. But no, they were being taught that yes, there are real monsters in this world, and you're going to have to be strong, damn strong. And that's this whole thing with mindfulness that they're talking about now, that you let go of the labels. Okay, we have labeled reality. And this is what we teach our children in pre-K, kindergarten, grammar school, etc. We teach them labels. We teach them what is reality.
Beyond the Forbidden.
Welcome to Beyond the Forbidden. Today on the show, I got Laurence Galian. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But this is going to be a treat. I can't wait to dive into some of his work, his material, and his Alien Parasites book. I'll get a link to that and his other books in the description below. But Laurence, welcome to Beyond Forbidden. How you doing?
Thanks very much, Michael. I really appreciate being here. It's good to talk to you.
I tell you what, can't wait to look into some of your books. But man, that Alien Parasites book, I'm about 60 to 75% through it. And I tell you what, that is a very fascinating read. It's like I told you right before the show, it's definitely up my alley. This type of material, and I can't wait to get into some of your other books also. But what I guess I know a little bit about you through reading, and I've listened to some of your older stuff also. I've gone through some of your YouTube videos, but there's going to be people in the audience who is Laurence Galian. So I guess just give a little background about yourself and what led your interest into this field of research, man.
Oh, wow. That's not an easy question to answer.
I'm here all the time, Laurence. So take your time, and the floor is yours, man.
Thank you, sir. Well, my interest with extraterrestrials was actually sparked when I was about 12, 13 years old. In school, they sent around a little flyer where you could order paperback books, and there was one book. The title was Incident at Exeter. Exeter is a city in Massachusetts, and I ordered that book, and it was the story of multiple sightings in Exeter, Massachusetts. And wow, immediately that really fired my imagination. Couple that with a childhood love for monster movies, especially movies about aliens and so forth. And I was off to the races. I just read everything I could get my hands on about aliens, extraterrestrials. But I've always also been a very spiritual, religious person. I studied for the priesthood. I was brought up Roman Catholic and very devout Catholic when I was younger. But I've explored the world of spirituality from A to Z. I spent 10 years writing one book just about Sufism. I traveled the world interviewing different Sufi masters and speaking with them. And yeah, you name it. I did a long stint studying paganism and witchcraft, which actually I've been getting back into lately, getting back into my pagan and Wiccan roots. And I'm really enjoying that. But I guess
why is that? Why is that, Laurence? How come you're getting back? I guess you like to explore everything or open minded to everything, and I just follow where my gut, where my heart, my intuition leads me. Is that kind of the path for you also?
Basically, yeah. Yeah, where whatever I feel is like pulling me, is necessary. I always like seek for enlightenment, but I don't like that term. I don't consider myself like a teacher of how to become enlightened. Uh, I I think we live in such a multi-dimensional universe, such a complicated and interesting universe that for anyone to say this is the truth, or you must listen to me, or you must read my book and then you'll know everything. Uh, it's just bullshit. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I do not have time for people like that. They really annoy me. And there was a fellow, I don't know if you've ever heard or read anything by him, named Robert Anton Wilson.
Yes.
Uh, he wrote the Illuminatus trilogy and many, many books. I had the good fortune of meeting him actually and attending one of his lectures, uh, actually being caught in an elevator with him. And he told the best jokes. Fantastic. He wrote for Playboy magazine for a while, but this man was a genius when it came to the occult, to the metaphysical, and but he refused, absolutely refused to let anyone call him a guru. He refused to like what I'm saying is to say, well, now I'm going to teach you, the truth,
Mm-hmm.
the only truth, and nothing but the truth. Uh, One of the most amusing things about the lecture I attended was that the first thing he said when he walked into the room is, "I'm not going to talk about what it says in the brochure. I'm just going to talk about what I want to talk about today." And he did, and it was wild. It was a roller coaster ride, and yeah, I kind of think that's what real spirituality is about. You have to you have to be you have to be brave. You have to have courage. Uh, yeah, you can't be afraid to go into the dark places. Uh, this is definitely not for the butterflies, buttercups, and rainbow people. I don't mean anything against the LGBTQ community with the rainbow thing, but you get my idea that the people who think that,
I believe people can do whatever they want to with their bodies, whatever they want to do. I'm the freedom of expression, everything you want to do, but it comes to a point you need to realize that there's an agenda at play, you know,
mhm, yeah,
much more than what you think is going on, you know.
oh, there's deep, deep agendas taking place. Yeah, I firmly believe that this uh, what I don't even watch the news. For the longest time, I just don't watch the news because I think all of it is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
It's just created. And when I came across Gnosticism and Archons, which the Archons are the alien parasites.
I didn't
They're
give
not,
your full link to the title. Alien Parasites, 40 Gnostic Truths to Defeat the Archon Invasion.
yeah, there you go.
One hell of a title there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, I always had the the gut feeling that somewhere deep inside the earth, in one sense or another, perhaps dimensionally or actually physically, uh, aliens were controlling or are controlling what is happening uh, politically, um, as far as health goes. We'll say no more about that right now. But anything that goes on with the news and probably earthquakes, tsunamis, they're they've got their tentacles in everything, and that's what the book Alien Parasites is all about. Is
I got a bunch of quotes. I say a bunch, probably at least 10 to 12, probably 10. And I know I got this is from your, I think it's chapter one. What does the term alien parasites mean? Alien parasite quote, alien parasites are what the Gnostics call archons. They cause delusions in people's thinking because they convince their victims to believe things that are not true. A delusional person has false or unrealistic beliefs or opinions. A delusional person is someone who has a belief that is held with an extremely strong conviction despite superior evidence to the contrary. Now, this trait may be a brave attribute, but the delusional person refuses to listen and consider the opposite opinion. A mature and wise individual always is willing to listen to an opposing opinion and actually is eager to hear the opposing point of view in order to make sure his or her theories and beliefs can withstand all opposing ideas and to revise his or her ideas if necessary. Gnostics call these archons parasites because they, in essence, live inside the minds of human beings. They steal psychic and life energy from human beings as they slowly devour their host. They're aliens because they're not indigenous to this planet. End quote. Man, you're very good with your words. I love the book. Very
Thank you,
good.
sir.
And with that quote that I just read, and some of these quotes I'll read throughout the interview, and you can give your, your ideas and things you may like to expand on it. Cause I know the book is 10 years old, 8. How old is it?
Uh,
8,
I thought it was about 5, but
maybe 5. It might've been 5. I looked at the date. I forgot. I look at so
I'm
many
going to do
books.
a video version. Oh, yeah. Um, no, I have a copyright 2019 here.
I don't know where I saw. Maybe I saw something else. But anyways, well, with that quote I just read, my wife, who is in the mental health field, they call that borderline personality basically what I just read. Like, a delusional person is someone who has a belief that is held with an extremely strong conviction despite superior evidence to the contrary. And how you said, but the delusional person refuses to listen and consider the opposite opinion. What else did you say within that quote? Basically everything I just read from your book. And that, what does the term alien parasites mean? What they call in the mental health field is borderline personality, and there's a lot of that going on now. And I got more questions that I'll ask you later on, but my wife says that each year the numbers for people that have psychological issues and that are getting admitted, to these,
Psychiatric
yes,
wards.
they're going up each and every year. It makes you wonder
The
why.
amount
Or
of
is there an
prescriptions.
evasion? Is there an evasion like you got on your book, 40 Gnostic Truths to Defeat the Archon Invasion?
It appears that there has been and continues to be an invasion. And like any good army invading force, they attacked from multiple directions, and we can also say dimensions, in the case of the Archons. Now, for us to be talking about alien parasites, a psychiatrist could very easily say, well, just talking about me, that, oh, I need to be on some medication. But the point that I try to drive home in that quote that you just read is that I'm willing to listen to all the sides of the story. Um, uh, I don't have my mind closed. And that's what I was talking a little bit about when we started the program, is that I don't, even with Gnosticism, as close as an analog as it is to what we are dealing with right now, I still will not say this is the end all and be all uh, of the condition of our world, our human existence, but it can help us.
You wouldn't be a Gnostic if you were to say this is the end all be all.
Do you want to help support Beyond Forbidden and receive extra content that's not seen anywhere else? By becoming a patron, a few things you will receive are the full-length 90-minute or 120-minute podcast episode. Members will also receive a private link to the video podcast and will only be exclusive to Patreon members. In-person, face-to-face interviews with some of the most well-known, respected researchers. Behind-the-scenes footage of interviews not seen anywhere else. And that's just a few perks. So what do you have to lose? Cut out one brain-rotting, overly processed Happy Meal a month that doesn't do anything beneficial for your mind, body, and spirit, and become a Patreon for just $5.
Yes, well put. Right, right. I mean, the Gnostics, in so many ways, I think it's fascinating that people tend to think, oh, well, they were writing 2,000 years ago, these insane gospels, really weird gospels, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and all sorts of things. But these people, in my opinion, were much more advanced in many ways than us. And yeah, to think that, well, what do we have now in today's Bible? We have in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, four gospels that pretty much agree with one another. And the church has managed, well, they had managed to get rid of all the other gospels and writings and
the apocrypha texts.
Yeah, the apocryphal text. Yes.
Why did they get rid of those for, in your opinion?
Because they were showing the multifaceted aspect of who Jesus was, what is going on in this universe, what is happening. I mean, I think I'll just be bold and say it, that the one way to put it is the devil dwells in the Vatican. Um, and it's
I think majority of people that listen to this show would agree with that.
well, yeah, I would think so. So that's why I said it. But yeah, I mean, at first, uh, I was at a pagan festival, wearing nothing but a loincloth when I came to a bookseller, and I saw on the big table he had of all these books, a book that said the Nag Hammadi Scriptures, um, the revised and updated translation of sacred Gnostic texts. And I was like, what are they?
Hmm.
So I opened the book and I started reading, and immediately my my spidey senses, my spiritual senses, like went off, and I knew this this is profound shit. This stuff, this is something very important.
About
And
what year was this? I like to go in chronological order somewhat to, if I'm hearing stories like about you, like about what year was this
okay, I would say
roughly?
roughly 1990,
Okay.
90s, early 90s,
Okay.
probably. Um, yeah, I hadn't written my first book yet. My first book came out in 95 about. So anyway, I said to the guy, look, I'm almost naked and I don't have any money. Would you please just put this book aside? I'm going to run to my tent and get the money. And he says, relax, relax, and the book will be here when you get back. And yeah, I immediately went to my tent, got some bucks out, and bought the book. I started reading it, and to be honest, I thought I was like reading the Bible on LSD. Um, it really felt like I was saying to myself, what the fuck is this? What are they saying? I mean, you open up to any page.
You had the book right
Here,
there in front of you.
yeah, I do.
Let me show us the cover. Yep, that's the one. I think I have. I don't have the physical copy. I have the
Uh,
Kindle
okay.
version, but I want to get the physical copy though.
It's great to have it in your hands. Yeah, like here's just a series of vowels. I just opened it at random to give you a taste of like what I experienced. I call upon you, who makes the kingdom of power, whose word is an offspring of light, whose words are immortal, eternal, immutable, whose will produces life for forms everywhere, whose nature gives form to substance, to whom souls, powers, and angels are moved. And then it has a, and just all these vowels, and then zo, za, zo. Uh, and I'm like, wow, uh, what am I reading? How do I even find my way into this? Is there a door to like, you know, uh, this does not read like your your typical novel or your typical, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John gospel.
How old
Uh,
are the Nagamati scriptures supposed to be?
well, uh, there's some debate, but basically, uh, they were written before, during, and after the life of Jesus, basically. So we're going like from 200 BC, before the Common Era, to maybe 200, 300 of uh, the Common Era. So over a period of about 500 years, there's some scriptures that were written in Egypt. They were written in all different places, and also languages. Uh, so, but there is one gospel, the Gospel of Thomas, and this is really, I think, one of the most sacred books I have ever read. This is in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. And some people believe, a lot of people believe, that this was the original gospel, if you will, because it's just a collection of sayings of Jesus, who um, I call the Christ or the Christos, because I believe there were two beings, actually, Jesus and the Christos.
Do you believe
That's
Jesus really existed? Because I just interviewed Joe Atwill.
uh,
You know Joe Atwill. He
no, I
wrote
don't.
he wrote the Caesar's Messiah.
Uh,
If I'm quoting him correctly, I think he believes that Jesus was basically the byproduct of was created by Caesar, by Rome,
yeah, yeah,
by the Flavians, which were three Caesars who were also represented as the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. You know,
yeah. I've listened to a lot of that, those theories, and uh, yeah, I do. I personally think that there was a Jesus, but that there was also a very exalted being that was known as the Christos to the Gnostics, who actually merged with Jesus, um, and we don't even necessarily have to say that that there was a physical Jesus. Interestingly enough, uh, the New Testament is all out of order. It's completely just a mess. Uh, in other
I think
words,
the confusion. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Laurence. I think the confusion is a lot of people, a lot of the researchers, I would say.
yeah,
I'm not saying Joe. I don't know. I didn't go deep down the rabbit hole because I just let him speak, and he pretty much spoke the entire interview. I let him. He was on a ramble. So, um, but I'm not saying him, but other researchers they only just look at the Bible. But with my conspiratorial mind, like my show and me, I dive in everything, the paranormal and UFOs and the ETs. Of course, that's my favorite. But conspiracies, ancient mysteries, you got to look at the whole picture. But my conspiratorial mind is like, how do we know that the Bible wasn't edited and changed and altered? Not saying it's not true, but
right.
that's the Disneyland version. The Bible is the Disneyland version, and then you got to
Abs-
read these other texts to get to the deep, the ancient mystery school religion parts of it. You know.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to ask a question to one of these type of scholars that you're talking about, and my question was, well, have you been factoring in the Nag Hammadi scriptures? And he said, no, no, not yet. Uh, I'm like, they've been around since 1947. Uh, there's been scraps and even larger portions of them uh, dating from the early 1900s. How can you possibly ignore them? Like you're saying, you have to factor in everything. So yeah, I am not going to say, oh, ex cathedra, yes, Jesus existed. There are many ways of looking at it, and I don't think it's necessary, actually, um, because the the Gnostics were trying to make a point. Gnosis is direct spiritual knowledge, or direct knowledge of reality with a capital R. Um, and so you can't fit that into a box, a nice little box with a nice little bow and all tied up and everything pretty. And there's a lot of people who write these books, who say, yeah, it was invented by Rome, and so forth and so on. Uh, and they do have some good points. Uh, for instance, Paul, all the letters of Paul that the Catholic Church is so fond of, actually, he was the first one to start writing. Now, he started writing about 15 to 20 years supposedly after the death of Jesus. Okay. So maybe about the year 60, he began to write. Now, Paul was a man that just was riding on his horse one day and saw this bright light, was knocked off his horse, and was temporarily blinded and thought he heard the words, he thought he heard Jesus talking to him. He never met Jesus. He, in all his letters, he only tells like maybe 2 or 3 stories from the life of Jesus. He doesn't talk about any of the parables that Jesus taught. Basically, Paul was anti-Jesus. His whole thing was Christ, and he was like that Christ died for your sins, and so yeah, that was the big thing with him. But no, he wasn't interested in anything that Jesus actually said or did, at least as we read in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then around the year 70, Mark, not the Apostle Mark, the names are just given. These four gospels are completely anonymous. We don't know the names of the people who wrote them. They're lost in the sands of time. But Mark wrote something, a person wrote something, and that later became known as the Gospel of Mark. And it's very interesting. If you go to any Christian Bible store, Christian store, and look at just about any Bible, any edition, old, new, whatever, and you go to the end of Mark's gospel, it will say sometimes just a tiny little line in very fine print, or else it will have a very lengthy explanation that when it gets to the point of Jesus being laid in the tomb and then the women going to the tomb, well, what happens in Mark's gospel is that the women go to the tomb, they find it empty, and they become frightened and they run away. And that's the end. And then the Catholic Church, and there is no quibbling about this, because I'm saying you go to any Lutheran Bible, any Presbyterian, Anglican, you name it, it will clearly say that this ending about Jesus's resurrection was tacked on to the end of Mark's gospel. Mark's gospel does not have a word about resurrection. Now, isn't that strange that here, 30 years supposedly after Jesus died on the cross, and there's this whole Christian community, and there most definitely was a Christian community, all dispersed throughout Rome and Asia and Central Asia, but not a word about resurrection. So that had to be fixed. So then came along Matthew, Luke, and then finally John. Right. And then there was a series starting around the year 300. The Roman emperor, basically, Rome was undergoing your listeners have probably heard some of this already now, but basically Rome was undergoing a rough time, and the emperor wanted to really unite the Roman Empire. And so, well, what could be better than to have a Roman religion that like everybody could get behind and believe in? So there was a series of church councils. The first was the Council of Nicaea, and there they battled whether Jesus was part God, part man, all God, or all man, or they had all these stupid debates. Did Jesus ever laugh? Did Jesus? I'm sure this is when they threw out all the women. Do you know that it appears that you don't read it in the you don't in the Gospels in the Bible, but it seems like the apostles and Jesus, they just walked all around the place, la di da di da da da. And Jesus gave these talks, and everybody loved them, and he did these miracles and blah 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 blah. But where did they sleep? Um, where did they get their food? Um, and it's becoming more and more evident that it was a group of wealthy women. We read about Mary and Martha in the Gospels. Uh, they they were really downplayed by the church councils. There was a large group of wealthy women that apparently did support Jesus and the apostles and the early movement. And so, but going back to Paul, here is somebody. He actually had fights with James, the brother of Jesus, and with Peter, one of the most important apostles. And it's written there in the Acts of the Apostles and elsewhere about how Paul wanted this Christianity to be open to everybody and blah, blah, blah. And James and Peter and everyone in Jerusalem wanted to keep the tradition that apparently Jesus was keeping of following the Jewish teachings. But it strikes me as so bizarre that that we open up the New Testament with these stories about this guy who actually died and then like rose up like a zombie from the grave, and but then later on we have this guy Paul, who he says he's an apostle, and I mean, I think he was a narcissist. You can throw the book at him as far as psychiatric disorders. What an egotist! I mean, this man. I call what he create. Well, he created Christianity. I call it Paulianity. It's definitely not what Jesus taught. But I think we've talked enough about this Jesus. I think your listeners want to hear more about these archons and these alien extraterrestrial invaders.
Well, I got another quote from What Does the Term Alien Parasites Mean? And you quoted Jay Widener.
Go ahead.
But, quote, this is from What Does the Term Alien Parasites Mean? Chapter. Quote, Jay Widener, famous filmmaker, author, and scholar on Rinse Radio, stated the following about the Archons. Gnostics preached that there was an invasion that occurred about 3600 BC and about 1600 years before the Nag Hammadi texts were buried. They wrote that the invasion was like a virus, and in fact, they were hard-pressed to describe it. The beings that were invading were called Archons. These Archons had the ability to duplicate reality, to fool us. They were jealous of us because we have an essence of some kind, a soul that they don't possess, and the Nag Hammadi texts describe the Archons. One looks like a reptile, and the other looks like an unformed baby or a fetus. It is partially living and partially non-living and has gray skin and dark, unmoving eyes. The Archons are duplicating reality so that when we buy into it, when we come to believe that the duplicated false state reality is the real reality, then they become the victors. That was a powerful quote that you quoted from Jay Widener. And
Go
so,
ahead.
so but if you want to, you want to elaborate on that before I go further?
Yes, I quoted Jay Widener because I thought he summed up very well a lot of Gnostic thought on the subject. It it seems that, I had mentioned that they attack in a multifaceted way. Um, and first, before we get to the archons, we should talk about the dictator, the head general of the archons, the Demiurge. Now, the Demiurge is the leader of the archons. The Demiurge, according to Gnostic thought, believes that he is the one true God, the only God. And
you said that in the Demiurge chapter quote, the Demiurge has his henchmen called Archons, who insert strange thoughts into people's minds. The Demiurge wants total control of the Earth's planetary destiny, and is the greatest threat to humanity. End quote.
He is, and as I was talking about, at the center of the Earth, or uh, deep down in the bowels of the Pentagon. I think the Demiurge, in some form or another, is present and is influencing and directly speaking through uh, the men and women there. Uh, he has created sort of like mini me's, little replications of himself, the archons. And now,
is it like would you say it's kind of like a computer virus that he created? The Archons is kind of like a computer virus in some way or fashion.
This is interesting. I find that fascinating that you brought that up, and also with the amazing spurt in the growth of AI. Uh, it's just taking off
Kind of
like.
like not to interrupt, but let's say I'm a computer hacker or whatever. I am the Demiurge. I create a
Mhm.
virus, hence Archons, to do my bidding.
Yeah, yes. Well, it's said by many Gnostics that the archons cannot actually physically uh, attack the earth, but holographically or interdimensionally, they can enter, or through quantum tunneling, they can enter our brains. And that's why I gave 40 Gnostic truths to defeat them, because they are an army, make no mistake about it. And let me give you some examples so your listeners can get a grip on what exactly is happening. Now, let's just first talk about addiction. uh, I'm living here. I don't know if your listeners know I'm in Mexico. I'm a New Yorker, a native New Yorker, but for the last 14 years I've been here in Mexico, and so uh, and I like to watch NFL football. Almost all the commercials now are for gambling companies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's happening in the States, but I cannot believe the amount of money that they must have to buy up all the commercial space. There are, a few car commercials. Yeah, a few car commercials, but basically it's just a competition between online betting companies. And now I had a very good friend, my best friend from childhood. Uh, his name was Jeff, and he played the guitar really great. He could sing just like Cat Stevens, and he was a great fellow. Uh, but he fell into the world of gambling, and he would always want to go to Atlantic City with me, and I went with him a few times until I realized that he was a gambling addict. And I don't know if you've had direct experience dealing with an addict, but it's very sad. It's very, I mean, one day he came home. I was good friends with his wife. I actually introduced him to his wife. Um, and it was payday, and his wife said, "You got paid today?" He says, "Yeah, yeah." And she says, "Can I see the check?" Because she knew what was going on. And he says, "Well, there was an accident." And she says, "What do you mean there was an accident? Are you okay, Jeff?" And he says, "No, no, no, no." He says, "I was looking at the check, and I was holding it out the window, and the wind blew and it blew out of my hand, and I lost the check." And I said, "Do you really expect us to believe that?" Um, and um, from then on, he just got worse and worse and worse. Lost his marriage. He had a child. Lost custody of his kid. Um, and so addictions, food addictions. What do I mean? Look at our supermarkets. I mean, uh, they are, I mean, they're places of gluttony. You look at like the seven deadly sins. Uh, those are the areas where the archons are attacking. They're attacking through addiction. They're attacking through pornography. Uh, they're uh, they're attacking through. Look at the insanity of what's happening with the political situation in the United States and around the world, Ukraine, Russia, Israel, etc., etc.
I was going to ask you about this. I just found the question that I have for you along with this, Laurence, is
Please,
um,
Mike.
what are some other ways that one can be psychically possessed by these archonic entities? Can they latch on someone when they are full of ego, greed, and evil? Can they latch on via a person who is astral traveling? Addictions like gambling, drugs. Can they latch on to someone who people zombified in the streets, on meth um
Yeah.
and fentanyl? Can they latch on someone if they are unhealthy? Can they even latch on through the television through an innocence of a young child when they're in that fragile state of development? What are some other ways? Which of those that I mentioned would you omit?
Speak the truth, brother. I mean, you just outlined a really a whole bunch of the ways. Like I said, they're
let's
multi-directional.
let's tackle. Sorry,
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
elaborate on the one. Let's say, can they even latch on through the television through an innocence of a young child when they're in that fragile state? Elaborate a little more on that, because I feel like, I have a 13 and a half month old child now, and I worry about her future. I'm going to do the best I can, but I see how, and we, even adults, we're byproducts of propaganda through film and the hypnosis that we go through watching television. I love television too, but I know what's going on. I love football. I love watching movies, but I understand the game. But I feel
Yeah.
like if when you see kids, they're staring into that screen. It makes me wonder: can something come through to their subconscious and latch on?
Well, uh,
The innocence of a young child.
the child's brain is actually uh, we don't really want to admit it, but the fact is that the adult brain is not fully developed until at least 18, 19, about 21, between 18 and 21 years of age. Uh, so back then, when you're dealing with just a tiny little baby, this baby is like a tabla rasa, a clean slate that anything can be written on. Now, I know, I know that there's going to be Disney fans in your audience because there have been many people in your audience who were put in front of the television by their mothers, by their babysitters, and to watch Ariel or whatever over and over and over 1,000 times. And now, what truly amazes me is uh, I talk to these couples who are getting married, and I ask them, where are you going for your honeymoon? And they say, Disney World or Disneyland. And I think, oh my God, adults wanting to go to Disney World to see Mickey Mouse or whoever the new hero is or whatever. Um, there's um, there's this way that they are being taught through these movies about the world. Now, in olden times, medieval times, and even before, we told children fairy tales, uh, stories that were really scary, that had real monsters in them. But now, not supposed to, really frighten the children with these things. But no, they were being taught that yes, there are real monsters in this world.
Do you want to help support Beyond Forbidden and receive extra content that's not seen anywhere else? By becoming a patron, a few things you will receive are the full-length 90-minute or 120-minute podcast episode. Members will also receive a private link of the video podcast and will only be exclusive to Patreon members. In-person, face-to-face interviews with some of the most well-known, respected researchers. Behind-the-scenes footage of interviews not seen anywhere else. And that's just a few perks. So what do you have to lose? Cut out one brain-rotting, overly processed Happy Meal a month that doesn't do anything beneficial for your mind, body, and spirit, and become a Patreon for just $5.